So imagine for a second that you had to design the perfect society, right from scratch. Where would you even begin? What would your blueprint look like? Well, believe it or not, over 2,000 years ago, one man actually tried to do just that. He's known as the father of political science. And today, we're going to walk through his architectural plan for the perfect state. Let's dive into the mind of the master architect himself, Aristotle. Now, to really get Aristotle's blueprint, you have to understand that he was his teacher Plato's greatest student, but he was also his biggest critic. You see, where Plato was this total idealist, chasing some perfect form in a world of ideas, Aristotle was all about pragmaticism. He was grounded in common sense. Plato was radical, Aristotle, pretty conservative. This contrast, it's the whole key. Aristotle isn't trying to build some fantasy city in the clouds. He's trying to design a stable, functional state that could actually work in the real world. So where does any good architect start? With the foundation, right? And for Aristotle, the foundation of the entire state is human nature itself. What are we as human beings fundamentally all about? This is one of Aristotle's most famous lines, and it's the absolute bedrock of his entire political philosophy. What he's saying here is that the state isn't some artificial thing we invented, or some contract we all decided to sign. No, for him, it's a natural and necessary part of being human. We are literally hardwired to live together in a political community. He even said that anyone who can live without a state is either a beast or a god, but definitely not a human. And this is how he saw it all coming together. It's a natural evolution, step by step. First, we form families. That's for our basic biological needs, survival. But that's not enough for us. So families naturally group together into villages to fulfill our social needs. But even that isn't the final destination. The village then evolves into the state, which he saw as the highest and most complete form of community, the one place designed to help us reach our ultimate potential. And this is the crucial takeaway. The state's purpose isn't just about survival, protecting us from bad guys or whatever. Its real job is to create the conditions for its citizens to achieve a good life, to really flourish and become the best versions of themselves. I mean, that's an incredibly optimistic and ambitious goal for any government, right? Okay, so every architectural plan has to define who exactly gets to live in the building. And this is where we get to the most controversial and, let's be honest, pretty troubling parts of Aristotle's design. His whole idea of who gets to be a citizen. You see, for Aristotle, citizenship isn't some automatic right you're born with. Not at all. It's a duty you have to perform. It means actively participating in running the state, serving on juries, debating and passing laws. It's basically a full-time job, and a very, very exclusive one at that. And here's the who's out list. According to his blueprint, slaves are out because he believed they lacked reason. Women are out because he considered them intellectually inferior. The elderly, they're out too because they're physically unfit for the duties. And of course, children are out because they don't have mature judgment. I mean, this vision of a state run by a tiny select group is a million miles away from our modern ideas of universal citizenship. Let's zero in on his most notorious idea, his theory of slavery. He actually argued that slavery was a natural institution. Why? Because he believed nature itself makes two kinds of people. First, you have masters, who have reason and courage. Then you have natural slaves, who have physical strength, but in his view lack the capacity for rational thought. Now, what's really wild is how he tries to justify this from a purely functional standpoint. He argues it's useful for everyone involved. For the master, it frees up his time so he can go be a good citizen. For the state, it creates a whole class of people who can actually govern. And, get this, for the slave, he argued that they benefit by getting guidance from a rational master. It's a deeply uncomfortable argument, but it's absolutely essential to understanding his worldview. And that entire worldview is just completely shattered by later thinkers like Immanuel Kant. This single idea that every single person is an end in themselves, not just a tool for someone else's purpose, well, that's the ethical foundation of modern human rights. It stands in total, direct opposition to Aristotle's justification of slavery and just shows how far our own moral architecture has come. Okay, so once he's defined the inhabitants, how did Aristotle plan to keep the whole house from falling down? Well, he created a blueprint for stability, a set of rules and structures designed to make sure his state would actually last. This is his famous classification of governments, and it's based on his study of 158 different city-states. The logic is actually pretty simple, but so powerful. First, you ask, Who's in charge? Is it one person, a few people, or a lot of people? Then you ask the really important question. Are they ruling for the common good or just for themselves? So a monarchy that rules for everyone is good. But when that king starts ruling for himself, it decays into a tyranny. An aristocracy of the best becomes an oligarchy of the rich, and rule by the many for the common good, which he calls a polity, corrupts into democracy, which for him was basically mob rule by the poor acting in their own selfish interests. So which system did he actually prefer? It wasn't monarchy, it wasn't aristocracy, it was polity. And why? Because he believed a state governed by a strong, stable middle class was the most practical and the least likely to become corrupt. In his mind, the middle class is the perfect defense against the extremes, a super greedy rich elite on one side and an envious poor majority on the other. It's his famous golden mean in political form. And this right here is the reason he was so focused on stability. He believed that the root cause of all political chaos, of every revolution, is the feeling of inequality. It doesn't even matter if it's real or just perceived. When any group in society feels like they're being treated unjustly, the state's foundation starts to crack. That's a political insight that feels like it could have been written yesterday. So what was his ultimate fix for all this? His final, load-bearing pillar to hold the whole thing up? The rule of law. This quote is a direct shot at his teacher Plato's idea of an all-powerful philosopher king. Aristotle says, no way, no single person, no matter how wise they are, can be trusted with absolute power. Why not? Because every human has passions, biases, and appetites that can cloud their judgment. But the law? The law is impersonal. It is pure reason, stripped of all that messy emotion. It is the ultimate guarantee of a stable and just state. So at the end of the day, we're left with this incredible blueprint. His ideas on who gets to be a citizen are, to us, obviously and deeply troubling. And yet, his insights about the stabilizing power of a middle class, the corrosive danger of inequality, and the absolute necessity of the rule of law, those ideas echo in our political debates every single day. So the question for us is, how much of our modern world is still, for better or for worse, built on Aristotle's ancient foundation?